Welcome, early joiners. We're waiting for everybody to come in. So give us just a moment as it all piles up. Give everybody another minute or so. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started because we've got a lot to cover today. Welcome everybody to Real Estate Business Analytics, or REBA's very first webinar for the industry. I'm Donald Davidoff. I'll talk about myself in a moment. What we're going to do today is talk about what's wrong with BI and rental housing, and more importantly, what some very august industry leaders are doing about it. So in a moment, I'll stop sharing the screen so you can see people's faces a little better. But here's the crew I've got. Really couldn't be more tickled to have such a great group of data experts and strategists in the industry. Stephanie Furman from Catalyst Housing Group, Daniel Raphael from Brookfield, and Eric Rogers from Carmel. So I'll stop sharing so they can see everybody a little better right now. And why don't we kick it off? Stephanie, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then we'll go to Daniel, and then Eric, and then we'll jump right in.
Thank you, Donald, and thank you everybody for letting me join this conversation today. My name is Stephanie Furman. I'm with Catalyst Housing Group. We're a middle-income housing provider in the state of California and have made data and technology kind of one of the leading core tenets of how we approach our business. So really excited to be here today to take off on some of the lessons that I've had from my experience at Greystar and previously at Riverstone Residential. So thank you.
Excellent. Daniel?
Hi, I'm Daniel Raphael with Brookfield Properties, which is a real estate investment company. We invest in all types of assets. My focus is on multifamily. I lead the data science department at Brookfield, which is responsible for reporting, data analytics. Prior to joining Brookfield, which I've been with for almost 3 years now, I spent 11 years in a series of roles, from being on-site managing communities to financial reporting, data analytics, from Greystar, Avalon Bay, and Archstone.
Excellent. Part of the Archstone diaspora and the Greystar diaspora. That's quite a combination. Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric Rogers. I'm Senior Vice President of IT for Carmel Partners. I've been with Carmel for 16 years now, doing a number of different jobs. I am an IT guy, focus on data, business analytics, but through my time here, I've also led our revenue management team and overseen property operations when we did in-house residential services.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric. And for those who don't know me, I'm Donald Davidoff, your moderator and host for today. I am one of the co-founders of REBA, Real Estate Business Analytics. Probably biggest claim to fame, I led the team that built LRO way back when. Had 10 years at Archstone, running pricing, revenue management, and then also all of marketing and some other projects. Brief year at Holiday Retirement in the senior living space, and then have been doing high impact C-suite consulting projects for a good 8 to 10 years. Prior to founding REBA, and business intelligence was one of the things that we worked on. So let's get it started right away. The title itself sort of begs the first question. What is wrong with BI in rental housing today? Eric, I'll let you go first. We'll go in reverse order this time. Eric, and Daniel, then Stephanie.
Yeah, I mean, how long do we have to talk about that? There is a lot of things that are still wrong that we've been fighting for years and years and years. I mean, some of the big issues that we deal with is the plethora of data sources. You know, we've gone through trying to find an all-encompassing suite of tools to utilize through residential services and operations, to switching back and forth to best of breed and segmenting that out. And when you do that, you have data pockets all over the place. So trying to centralize data and get your hands on it is one of the biggest issues. And I think one of the other things that we've run into is just getting appropriate data definitions, figuring out how people are talking about specific KPIs, specific data points, and making sure everyone's talking about the same thing and finding those as people move companies. Their definition of occupancy might be different than what your definition of occupancy is, how you're looking at it. So getting that as a classification as well is very important. And I guess the only other thing, just not being in property management for my entire career, I've come from a bunch of different industries. One of the things that still makes me scratch my head when I look at a lot of our systems is there's still a lot of lack of effective dating. So getting historic records and finding out point in time analytics has always been a challenge within this industry, it seems.
Yeah, that is fascinating. One of the things that we've seen at REBA is how many systems of record don't store the history of key parameters or key data. And so, one of the things we preach is a good BI platform, at least from the day you turn it on, it starts creating that snapshot for you, because otherwise you just never have that history. Of course, nothing that can be done about the history that's been lost. Daniel, what's your perspective on what's wrong with BI and rental housing?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree with what Eric shared on data sources, data definitions, and history. I have a few additional ones I would add that I've come across as main drivers for me. One is within the data source, our industry has very few data points. So for the industry and for market share, insights from minimal data access makes it difficult to identify what is the true market driver. So you really have to understand that data to make sure of the limited data points you have access to, they are cohesive. So an example is like industry property. In our industry, we're recording one lease a year, one rental transaction a month. Compare that to like MasterCard or Visa. They have thousands of transactions every second. Grocers like Coca-Cola, they have 6,000-7,000 cans of soda sold every second. So there's a lot that goes into only having a few data points to transact a year or a month. Also, what Eric said, I'd agree with the loss of history when property might sell. And then market share side, we own the largest REIT in America is Greystar, and they maybe have 1% of the market share of the rental housing market compared to something like Coca-Cola, who has almost 50% of the share. So just hard to gain some insights that you can truly rely on when there's so much going on with shadow markets with mom and pop rentals. Another one I thought of is data dictionary. That's something that Eric also brought up, so I won't stay on that too long, but I would resound like occupancy definitions, leasing labels, building type, what is a mid-rise, how many floors? When you're talking about an understanding for adoption, making sure that it's clearly defined, not just in a data dictionary, but you also have it on dashboard that people can see too. When was a lease captured? Did it begin? What is a market rate versus asking rent, using the right terms? There's so many very niche terms in a lease that mean very different things if you don't know what you're looking at. So it's very dangerous to think you're reporting on the right thing and explaining it when you're looking at something completely different.
No, that's a really good point. I think we counted over 20 different rent metrics that need to be tracked when you think of raw rents and lease over lease rents and new versus renewal versus blended and then month to month, et cetera. And to your point, if you think you're looking at one thing and you're really looking at another, that's a real big issue. Stephanie, you've got a great perspective. I mean, you've worked with some of the largest companies in the industry, suffering with a lot of legacy systems, and now at Catalyst, kind of a chance to reimagine or start without a lot of technical debt. So talk to us a little bit about what you see as kind of the problems with BI and rental housing.
Yeah, I do think we're fortunate that we don't have tech debt. We've been able to start from scratch and take a team that has had a lot of hard knocks and starting over. So we've really tried to look at enterprise systems that we can morph to our business processes. I think the other thing unique about our business model is that we rent by income. So for every unit, we have 3 different rents at any point in time, or 3 or 4. And so most of the systems aren't necessarily architected to give us the data that we want in a way that's meaningful. for us, the KPIs, the data definitions, all of those things are important. But what's more important is process automation. And what do we do with this information to actually run our business? And so as we look at really trying to architect a platform that is going to be meaningful moving forward, we're taking two approaches. How do we blend data that we have in-house that is proprietary and unique to us with enterprise systems and merge those to create process automation looking forward versus actually looking in arrears? We actually have been lucky. We've been able to bring a significant amount of historical data into our current tech platform. And so we're probably poised pretty well to be able to create a tech stack that will enable us to do process automation moving forward.
Excellent. Yeah, go ahead,
touch
Eric.
on something that, just both Daniel and Stephanie mentioned this, I think, in a way that I think is another important thing of what's wrong. From Daniel's comment about the lack of transactional volume, and Stephanie looking at taking that to the next step. BI is usually always rated for what does it actually give you? How are you able to improve your decision making? What insights are you gained from that, and how can you essentially make more money by utilizing these tools? And some of the problems I think we still have with BI in our industry is, lack of a better word, it's a lack of courage to take that information and take action using it. Because since we do have such low transactional volume, a mistake costs you for a year. It costs you for that whole term of the lease. So having the boldness to take that insight and make a decision to change things, to change processes, to change rents, to change amenity values, you have to have that courage that the information is correct, that the BI is correct, and that your decisions are going to have those right impact, and then be able to report on that impact later on down the road to show success, to show failure, so you learn better in the future. So having companies get that data-driven courage to take that information and take action so that it has value.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting to me, Eric, because when you speak of sort of the courage to take action, there's both the trust factor, and then also, to me, it's like, well, how many times do you get the opportunity to take that action, right? One of the things that we've been preaching for years, and it's why some of the big guys have done, very expensive bespoke systems. And what Reba's trying to do is give that sort of experience on a subscription basis, so you don't have to spend $3 million in a couple of years up front, like Avalon Bay did, et cetera, is so many people spend most of their time doing data collation, chasing down the data and pulling it together. And if they're an analyst, downloading and doing VLOOKUPs and index statements and things like that. And when it takes 80% of your time to find the data and only 20% to analyze it, there's only so many decisions you can make in a day. If you can flip the script and spend 10 or 20% of your time pulling the data together, collating it, and 80 to 90% analyzing and acting, I think you'll see more throughput. And you also get a virtuous cycle, right? The more you make decisions and get good results, the more you trust the system and move on from there. So I think that's a really, really good point. It's a great segue then into the second half of the title, right? What are some leaders in this industry doing about it? All three of you are leaders, obviously, quite on the cutting edge, I think, with respect to data. Let's do it in reverse order, since Stephanie's probably got her problem statements most fresh in her mind. So Stephanie, you're earliest in the journey of the three of you here. So, kind of what is your approach, I guess more philosophically, and then as I'll actually go to Eric and then Daniel, because Eric is a little further along in the journey, and then I think Daniel at Brookfield has actually been using the system the longest of the three of you. So Stephanie, what early in the process, what is it you're trying to do to solve these problems?
Sure. I'll take it from a little bit different approach. So we look at business intelligence packages like Reba to provide us with a lot of operational data and transactional data. So what we've been doing over the past years is building processes and data in other areas. So one specific example of that is around construction management. We're actually building all of our workflow to track our renovation projects within an Azure environment and Power BI, along with SharePoint business processes. We're going to bring that into the environment with our business intelligence platform so that we can actually aggregate the workflow of our entire asset lifecycle. We're doing very similar things with the customer lifecycle. Again, as I mentioned, because we rent on income, we've had to build some custom applications to capture that data up front. And so we're doing in-house development to supplement what we believe we're going to need from the business intelligence platform and our property management system. So we're integrating it into all of our business processes. And I think that that's probably the key differentiator of how we're approaching data.
Great. Eric, what are you guys at Carmel doing to try to solve these challenges?
Two things. I think one is an attempt at data governance. So for us, what that means at this phase is really defining where the data sources live, and where they're connected. And for us, it's been a challenge. We used to have, when we did our own internal residential services, we had an on-premises property management system that we had full access into the data. We knew everything, the ins and outs of the system. We could build reports off of that outside of the system because we had direct access. Now that we third party our management, we've lost a lot of that direct connectivity to the information, but still have the desire to get those same insights. So what we've done working with Reba, one of the primary things is to get that data collected. So utilizing data governance to document where all this information is coming from, where's the source of record for it, how is it getting pulled into the systems. But then we no longer have that internal expertise of every single data platform that's out there, all of the third-party tools that we're using. My team in-house doesn't have the time to learn all that, especially since we're not doing the operations, so we don't have to support it. We don't have to deal with the back end of it. So utilizing a third party like Reba, who's got that expertise of using and interfacing with multiple data platforms, they know all the vendors, they're working with them to do all that, saves my team a lot of time. But then also you get that expertise. So trying to, a lot of that is just trying to collect that data and get it into a central focus so that then we can start getting those insights. We've started to get to a certain level that I think is the beginning of the road, but those initial steps were huge for us in terms of building that centralized data platform.
No, excellent. One of the things that resonated with me, you talked about a source of record or system of record. I remember just last week being on the phone with you and your fee managed partner, literally using those words, right? Like chasing down, for governance purposes, chasing down the rabbit trail of what is truly the system of record, and where should that data be sourced, so that you can create a single source of truth that people can rely on. That's really useful. Before I turn to Daniel, one of the things I should say for everybody on the call, please do use the Q&A in the Zoom webinar functionality. I believe it's in the bottom part of your navigation. We'd love to get questions from you, and feel free. We may use one of them in the middle of the session, or we're definitely going to save a good 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just get them in that Q&A. So Daniel, turning to you, you've been on this platform now for since December of 20, so coming up on 16 months, and you personally have a lot of experience, back from your Arstone, Avalon, and Greystar days with different platforms. So, what are you and what is Brookfield as a company doing to try to solve some of those problems that you talked about earlier?
Sure. So not too much different than the other two that were Eric and Stephanie. We are working to centralize our data to make dissemination easier. We've been using Reba for that, and I found that it is easier to do that with a team like Reba, where you have a back-end developer that is is familiar with the industry, has been doing it for 20 years. I've seen data warehouses get stood up multiple times in the industry, 3 times now at different companies. And it's very similar when the initiative first starts out. If you're trying to do it on your own, you try to build and you hit landmines as you learn, and you learn from those landmines. And the problem with that for Brookfield is our motto is time is money. And anything we can do to save time, we try to do. And when you hit those landmines, sometimes a landmine could be you realize that you are not collecting a data point every day for a specific metric that you need, or you're collecting it in the wrong way, and then you could lose years of data figuring that out. So one of my first experiences starting this out, I did see the backend development team of Reba start working on this in my days at Archstone when they did hit landmines, and it took 5 years to work through those landmines, and there was lost data, and then it got better. And it was a great experience going through it. But now that we're down the road, this crew has built for multiple REITs out there, and engaging with them now with all of their learned experience has made us very successful in being able to stand up the program overnight with deep insights that make sense and are accurate. So the time to market for us has been phenomenal. Has been very impressive across our company, which we have different sectors that do office and residential and retail as well. And we collaborate on what we do. So that getting through the landmines was the biggest win for me in centralizing the data. Other wins, yeah.
No, I was going to say let's stick with you because I think we're sort of great segue into my third question, which is around sort of examples of success, and for those like Stephanie who are a little earlier in the journey, some of the expectations where they're going to get success. So Daniel, I know you shared with me several different stories of specific or explicit places where using a good BI platform not resulted in making more money because of better and quicker decision making. Your whole time is money comment really resonated with me. I'd love for you to share with the audience, a couple of those examples. I will tell you, I personally find when talking to COOs or CEOs who have never had a good BI system, the hardest thing is to get them over just in their head, they're just seeing themselves writing checks. And like, how do I get an ROI on that? At the same time, every time I've seen a CEO or COO who had a good BI platform and they change companies and they go to a company that doesn't have a good BI platform, immediately it's number 1 or 2 on their plate because they just feel like they're either flying blind or use a car metaphor, the windshield's so muddy they can't tell what's going on, and BI is the squeegee to give them that clear view. So it's always been fascinating to me. It's hard to get somebody who's never experienced it to understand the value, and yet once you've experienced it, it's automatic that I'm going to have that wherever I go. So maybe Daniel, with your experience, you can bring it to life for those in the audience who maybe haven't experienced it. How do you make more money with good BI?
Sure. Well, I mean, beyond the just necessity of being able to know what your data is, I'd say while there's been multiple ways we've been able to earn money from it, I think the 2 biggest ones that jump out in my mind is one of the first dashboards we put out there. And what was different about how we started up at Brookfield than every other company I've worked at, instead of one of the first big dashboards we built being for corporate, we built it for on-site teams. So we immediately got all of our community managers engaged. We built the dashboard with support with Reba for a renewal negotiation tool, where it makes our community managers as smart as the resident on a renewal they're about to negotiate when a resident is walking into their office within a few seconds. It's a way that they can see it commingles data from different sources where they can see how financials are going, where their ledger is at. They can see from our revenue management platform where market rates are trending. They can see on a chart where the offer rate is and where the perceived rent is for the resident. And you can gauge when you're in a position of strength to negotiate and when you're in a position of weakness and you might need to give something to the resident. You can see their whole leasing history. It brings up all the questions that a resident might raise during a negotiation and puts it right in front of that community manager to be able to negotiate with trending data. And also they can even pick the time that is best to maybe have that conversation as they see the market move that they can speak to versus the offer rate. So that has been a big win for renewal negotiation. Another,
I'll keep going. Sorry.
yeah, the other big one we've had that has been very exciting because it's been different than what many users have seen in the past. We've also partnered with a company called Ingrain that for us, it felt like for a very reasonable amount. They build spatial visualization. So we have visual renderings of our properties. So we can heat map all of the metrics we have in a live environment across the building to see where is our trade out, where are our days on market from which units have been sitting the longest, why this one unit off in the corner has been sitting there for the last 300 days because it's the furthest from the leasing office. No leasing agent wants to walk all the way there to show a tour on the top floor walk up. So they tend to show units closer. So you can identify units like that on lease ups. We've recently saved money by finding a tower that started leasing up much quicker than the other components of the building and realized that we were missing a $500 amenity premium that we could have otherwise placed on every unit in there. So instead of catching it down the road, we were able to catch it fairly early by seeing the lease up grow over time through just pressing the play button and seeing in Power BI and seeing the lease up progress day by day, week by week.
Excellent. Yeah, well, I've gone back to that renewal negotiation tool. On the consulting side, I've done many seminars on renewal negotiation tactics and how to deal with renewals. And one of the favorite objections from a resident is I've been a resident for so many years, been so great, et cetera, et cetera. How dare you do this to me? And I think just on that renewal negotiation dashboard, the fact that you can immediately and quickly see how many renewals have they gone for, right? Is this a newbie that I'm gonna have to explain renewals, or is it somebody who's likely to hit me with that objection? So just as a community manager, I'm more confident, I'm ready for what's about to come. I think that's just a great example. Eric, you've been live for a couple months now. What are any early successes and/or what you see the potential over the next few months?
I mean, for us, it's a different use of the time is money thing because it's saving time. One of the things that we do on a quarterly basis is a massive asset review. And the collection of that data. I mean, we've talked a little bit about that 80% of the time to collect data. Well, we have a number of asset management analysts that do that. They've gone to all of the source systems. They print or export tons of reports out of different systems into Excel. They compile all that, they copy and paste and merge that into another Excel and build out the graphics for all of these reports. It takes an insane amount of time. So our first win on that is by having all that data centralized and having it in a quick Excel cube for analysis, is it's already saved that asset management team a lot of time in generating those graphics and building out those reports. So they just have quicker access to the information. So that's one of those huge, cost savings for us. It allows that team to do more and other things without, spending their time copying and pasting Excel. So that's a huge one.
No, excellent example. Stephanie, you're still in implementation, so earlier in the process, but what are you looking for?
I think a couple things. One, supplementing our development team. So really looking at how do we leverage the most amount of data possible and have our team focus on processes that are unique to us. I think we're also interested, because we're a small company today, benefiting from aggregated data from other peers and customers in the industry. And then I think as we start to look forward to monthly and quarterly reporting, we really want to automate as much of that reporting and look forward as long as we possibly can. Our hold periods are up to 30 years. And so we really are reforecasting each month and each quarter on how we're actually going to return that money, not only to investors, but also to residents, return value to residents. As we start to look at the overall value of the platform and how we're approaching it, we have functional asset management roles. So we have an expert in construction and maintenance. We have somebody leading marketing asset management, operations asset management, and then accounting. And the four of them coming together and having all of their data automated in a way that brings together a holistic picture is very important to us.
Excellent. Hey, Daniel, I'm going to go back to you. I mean, for each of you, I want to hear what you feel the keys to successful adoption are. But before you give us the keys to successful adoption, let me share my screen for a moment and let everybody see. This is a dashboard monitoring the use of dashboards that Brookfield's put together. Daniel was kind enough to share it with us ahead of time, and I'll let you explain to the audience what they're looking at right here, and then you can talk a little bit about what drove this success at Brookfield.
Sure. Yeah, so this is a dashboard that shows views, daily views, weekly views, and weekly viewers. So we're tracking the count of how many people are using it, as well as how many times someone is going to one of our dashboard pages. We started back in December of 2020, but we didn't have usage tracking up and running until March. So that's why this is starting around March timeframe. And what this is showing, and it was just very exciting for us, a great story to tell every time I have a board presentation, is that our adoption is continuing to grow. Since we started in February, users have been engaging with it. They've, in February, as of the 22nd, what was that? Maybe a week ago, we hit our highest usage with a peak daily usage of 235 views daily. And at that time, our weekly views were up 50% over budget season, which I thought was going to be our peak usage for a while. Hit budget season and everyone's in the model, everyone's looking at it. Our budgeting tool is integrating with this, so it's shooting data over to our dashboards every couple hours. So our users are in there analyzing their data, drilling into metrics. And I thought that was going to be peak usage, but then people, I think they kept going, and we increased in January and February. And budget season, we were already up 100% from Q2 before that. So it's been very exciting.
Yeah, that's just amazing. So what drove that, Daniel? What do you attribute to, what I mean, obviously a lot of work, a lot of planning behind this. This wasn't just an accident. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think for us, it had to do with how we stood up engagement. When I look at engagement and how I wanted to roll this out to the company, it starts with the super users. So I understand that my team is not going to be able to build for the entire company. If we were, we would get bottlenecked, and then we'd be stuck. It would be great from the start because we have all the controls over everything for consistency, but then give it 6 months, a year, we put out content, and then people get hungry, they love it, they want more content, but we also have to maintain the existing content. And since each department's living in the environment, they need to constantly change it because marketing department is constantly evolving. Same with training and FP&A. There's constant improvements they're making and tweaks to their reporting based on industry and executive needs. So the ability to make everyone nimble, how they could access the data. While we see ourselves as kind of gatekeepers of the data, we try to support the super users so they can support the wider community. We do build for the company, and a lot of the dashboards are from us, but we have a bunch of departments that have engaged themselves. The larger departments have their own analytical support. The smaller ones we do a little more building for, but FP&A, portfolio management, revenue management, tax, all these groups have started to build stuff on their own as well. So they can be nimble, having the exact same data, using the exact same data model we're using in an intuitive way by business users. You don't want to be overly technical for this, but you have to be able to build. And by them engaging with it, they have been able to keep the data relevant for them for changes they want. But if they want something more robust built out that they're having trouble, they can either come to us where we'll support them, or we can build it for them. They just may have to wait a little bit longer. So it's that balancing act.
Yeah, I love that. That reminds me, I mean, I've heard the term democratizing the data, right? That's one of the things that a good BI platform does, is it democratizes the data so multiple people can put their own energy into it. It doesn't have to just be the energy of a central team. And you have the advantage that when everybody grabs occupancy, it's the same occupancy, right? Anybody out there in the audience has ever seen 3 reports with 4 different occupancy numbers, you know that pain point, right? You know that's part of what's wrong with BI in rental housing. And so I think, Daniel, you're describing a way to still let people have their, captain their own ship, but now 4 reports should have the exact same occupancy. Stephanie, you've got a lot of insights in trying to centralize activities, and as you build your build your tech stack as a relatively new company. What do you see from your experience and your early days with Catalyst as the keys to successful adoption?
I think we're lucky because a lot of us went through building a BI platform in the past, and some of the biggest challenges that we encountered historically was really trying to build around existing processes as well as existing data definitions. Both Eric and Daniel touched on it earlier. Data definitions can be a real obstacle within an organization. I think we're starting out with recommendations from our partners on what do they perceive as the best workflow that they could actually optimize their systems with, and working backward from there. We've actually approached it from the standpoint of having all of the experts, executives involved, even at the settings level and definitions level of what we're trying to capture. And that's been a really big differentiator. We haven't approached it from a technology systems perspective. We've actually approached it from the executives who are going to be looking at the information. It's been, each of them have actually commented on being able to get information they've never historically been able to see. And I think that will be incredibly valuable over time.
Yeah, no, that is brilliant. So many, in fact, I got a white paper on our website about, technology run BI initiatives rarely end up succeeding, right? They end up, the technical guys are really proud of what they've done, and the business people go, yeah, it's not quite what I really needed. So the notion of starting with the business people and pushing those requirements into the technology side, it sounds obvious, and yet I know from 20 years of experience, that's the exception, not the rule for the way people have done things. I do see a couple questions in the Q&A, so we'll get to those in just a moment. But Eric, why don't you go ahead and share what you've seen as the keys to some of your early success with the new BI platform?
I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we look at. I mean, to your point, one of the strong successes is just the reliability of what we're actually doing. I mean, the old Gartner stat of 70 to 80% of all BI projects fail. Being with someone who's actually done this numerous times, who's working with numerous clients that has the same mindset about data and BI helps guarantee that success. One of the other things that we're looking at is also a bit of employee satisfaction. I mean, we talk about democratizing the data a little bit, but what we've allowed for is, with the tool that the way we're envisioning the full rollout is we have a Power BI dashboard that is for executives, for people that come in, they want to have a set data view that they're going to look at on a periodic basis to get insight and make decisions. And then you have an Excel data cube that allows for the analysts to dive deeper, to ask questions of what's going on and find answers, and then ask more questions. And so that gives those asset management teams a whole new skill set to research and to focus on. So they're getting experience with data cubes, understanding the data science behind that, how that information works, how it's compiled, and how to build that out. So for them, there's a little bit of also, I think, employee satisfaction of getting new skill sets.
Yeah.
They're not all just property focused. Some of them are just analysts. They want to know about data. They want to know how to do this, and they're excited by it.
Excellent. So we got some questions in. I think this first one, if I'm interpreting correctly, might be aimed, Daniel, at your little success chart. But Eric, you can speak a little to what you're seeing as well. It says, what type of reports are frequented? The financials, question mark. So Daniel, when you think about all those page views, is there is there any place that tends to be looked at more than others, or what? I also might caution that which is looked at frequently, there may be something that's less frequent because there's a smaller number of people, but could be even more important. So I'll let you speak to both frequency and importance of what people are looking at.
Sure. So one unique thing we did, which probably cost me some nights of sleep, was at the same time we were rolling out our BI platform, we also had the need to switch our ERP. So we went from SAP to MRI. And with that switch, we made the decision, even though we were still developing some of our financial reports, we would do 100% changeover for financial reporting to come out of our BI tool. And that all had to happen seamlessly when we transitioned into a new software as well. So we only had UAT testing. Luckily, it went successfully. And the most used financial reports we have coming out of the tool, today, one that I really like, because when I was an analyst going in and doing these monthly variance reports, it could be time consuming to jump between different systems. We have a dashboard that it's lightning fast with drilling all the way down from the highest level. I've really enjoyed going from like your total make ready expense and drilling down not to just the GL detail, but the transaction debit and credit detail with the accounting descriptions of what actually happened there. In one dashboard, you can just drill up and down all the way to get your answers. Along those lines, something we don't have quite released yet, but we are working on and should have soon, is getting everyone out of these Excel workbooks where we're doing this monthly variance reporting and commenting. We're looking to bring that in to our BI solution to be able to do commenting on reports and be able to do write back functionality. So people are writing directly into the Power BI environment. And then at the end of the year, when you're budgeting, you can collect all of those comments at the same time to understand what the person was saying in the comments. Did it really make sense month over month? So you can collect them all together and you're out of Excel and it's organized. Portfolio budget was big too.
I'll remind you, certainly the renewal negotiation dashboards used with some frequency, although more so back when we were in the throes of the pandemic, and right now it's sort of like everybody's rents are up. But I'll also remind you, we not only changed the system of record for financials and then wanted the financials to come out of BI, we also did that right in the month of UAT on the budget application that you used last year. So this webinar is obviously about Reba BI, but you guys are also Reba budget users. And I remember a couple sleepless nights worrying about changing the system of record for financials right before we go into budget season. So yes, as you said, it did work out, and surprisingly well. But yeah, I will never forget that July. That was a lot of work. Let's see, the next question I have, how much do you utilize data science capabilities at your organizations, or do you need to resolve the mentioned challenges first? So Eric, we'll start with you and then we'll go to Stephanie and Daniel, because I think you all have perspectives on this. But yeah, talk a little bit about how your teams are organized and kind of that cadence of solving some of the governance problems first. I will remind everybody, Eric is representing a company that really is a group of asset managers using fee management, right? Daniel's got much more of the large owner operator, and then Stephanie is more of sort of, I'll call it the niche owner operator with the affordable angle. So we will, it's good for the audience to keep that in perspective as you hear the answer. So Eric, you can speak about data science capabilities and resolving those issues first, from an asset management perspective.
So there's a lot of stuff that we do have to solve still, and it's sometimes it is a game of horse cart, depending on what problems you're trying to solve fast. So in a weird way, we're almost going in parallel. We've started a data governance committee. We've had conversations, and we had some of this before, but this is really formalizing that structure to really look at how we've got it. The incoming data, how we're defining it, creating that lexicon for us. And then, but really some of the problems is we're still in that point where it is validating the data. It is making sure that we have all the information that we're looking for, that the numbers add up the way we expect them to, and getting that comfort level. So there's a little of both going on, but they're definitely worth tackling at the same time so that we get to an endpoint. After that point, from a data science perspective, I think that's an ongoing thing, but it's going to be mostly internal. That's what we want our teams to focus on, to be able to do that component of it, utilizing a vendor that's really there to help us compile the data.
Yeah, I will add, I'll applaud you for that sort of in parallel process, because my own experience is, one of the reasons 70% of BI, projects fail is so many people start top down in terms of governance first. And, governance is important, but let's be honest, it's kind of boring. It's hard to see the value until you're actually using it. And so it's kind of like the old ERP systems. If it's, 18 months or 12 months from start till you begin to get benefit, we humans, we don't have the attention span for that, right? So governance is important, but if you're sort of going back and forth, it's kind of like agile development. You're actually experiencing the problems and solving them and experiencing solutions, and you're keeping everybody excited with incremental improvements. I think you actually get to governance solutions that way, and you don't lose everybody's attention span because you are delivering value in parallel. So I totally applaud that approach, and it's certainly one we recommend. Stephanie, why don't you talk a little bit about your perspective on data science capabilities and the sort of chicken and egg or cart before the horse around, around those challenges versus being able to use the data.
Yeah, we've been setting it up simultaneously. So we've been going through all of our process workflow, all of our settings that are driving our data definitions. And then we actually have hired somebody who's a specialist in process automation, AI, and data science to focus on the output. So we've really focused on what is the outcome of what we're really trying to get, both financially and operationally, and then working backward to how that manifests within our tech stack. So we're doing it simultaneous, approaching it from a business process perspective and letting that drive our settings as well as our data definitions.
Excellent. And Daniel, obviously Brookfield has a lot of resources and you've got data science in your title. So talk a little bit about how a large owner operator is staffing up and handling this data science function.
Sure. Well, I mean, Brookfield is very data hungry. They want to get more into data science. They see there's opportunity there. What we've done so far is not what we're ultimately looking to do, but we have siloed pockets of data science today that's dabbling in it. And in the future, we want to make that more of a collective concerted effort where we have one department that can bring these teams together. Because when you talk data science, it's more statistics than it is specific industry knowledge. I mean, industry knowledge is good too, but it's something that can be applied cross sectors. So we have stuff with investment development, looking at sale data today, but we also in operations have some work being done in procurement to identify trends in spend. We are laying the groundwork for the future where we're collecting some of the data that we expect we're going to need to answer some questions. And as we get a little bit more of that in place, we're going to be looking to stand up a larger team that's focused solely on data science. One of the initial things we're looking to do that we're close to doing is bringing in all of axiometrics into our BI environment where we get 22 million units that we can track, benchmark against, and look at historical projections to analyze the future.
No, that makes a ton of sense. So next question, got a bunch of great questions coming out. What are some mechanisms that you're using to ensure that action is taken from the data that you're collecting and others are viewing within these BI dashboards? Do you have notifications, alerts, or other automated processes that are taking place for any metrics or KPIs that you're measuring? Who wants to take that first?
I could
I'll jump in.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Let's go Stephanie and then Daniel. Okay. Stephanie?
So I think the use of it, I mean, the number one thing that we recognized is Excel is the biggest database in the industry, right? And we wanted to get away from that as early in our business experience as possible. So we actually don't have a bunch of analysts. We're actually trying to build out everything within the BI platform and building the process automation around that. So it is really building the workflow around the BI platform that is encouraging everybody to participate and depend on it. I think the other point I would make is because we're using Microsoft Azure, Power BI, Power Apps, the Microsoft environment, everybody's living within a system that they're accustomed to. And we're not taking them out to a different environment for BI specifically. I think because we're building it into the ecosystem, I think that's been a differentiator as it relates to adoption.
Yep. Daniel?
Yep. So to get some of the talking about alerts, that is actually even something we were talking about this week and we are starting on. A lot of what we've done to date is laying the groundwork, getting the data in the hands of our end users so we can have an intelligent conversation about what's needed. We need to first bring the data maturity level of the organization up to a level where we can have these conversations. And that's what we've been focusing on, getting them into the data, building trust in the model. But we are at the stage where we're looking to set up alerts. And that's where, for an example of one we're looking at setting up right now is in marketing. When we talk about availability and we talk about it passing a certain threshold, we want a notification to be sent out to our marketing department so they know this property has passed a certain threshold. This should be looked at and you might want to take action on it. We've seen success in some of our other companies, other sectors with alerts by just having an alert and making awareness of what's happening in the data. The usage in the tool and the data awareness has increased about 100% with our railroad company.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing what alerting can do. And of course, tools like Power BI sitting on top of a data warehouse like Reba can, you can have subscription reports, you can create alerts, things like that. That's I think that kind of alerting and workflow is such a huge opportunity in this industry. We're way behind other industries on that. Eric, anything you would add to that?
I mean, I think that's where we're looking at. I mean, some of the stuff that as we've started to show a few more people what's going on with this BI initiative, specifically the marketing and kind of what Daniel said, it's, one of the nice things about adding marketing into that equation is going to be, down the road, that exact same thing is if you can give those notifications in there, you give the little red flags of where you want to push a property performance, that you then have the ability to put the key metrics of what's going to make that change into the system so you can report on it later. So not only do you see the dip in your performance, you see when the flag was set and when the notifications were set, then you can also see what changes were made in terms of the data. Did they increase the spend on pay-per-click? Did they increase spend on additional advertising? Did that impact traffic? Did that then impact leasing? And when did we get out of the pit, so that you learn from those experiences, and that's what we want to be able to prove down the road.
Well, and a couple of my favorite dashboards in Reba, one is the marketing priority dashboard, where you can set thresholds on, we built it with 5 metrics, but again, customers can customize that, do fewer, more, whatever. And basically a marketing manager can come in the morning and see sorted from most to least, which alert thresholds, which communities had the most alert thresholds hit. And then they can go to the funnel analysis dashboard and actually do what if analysis around, well, what if we increase leads, or how many leads more do we need to hit a target occupancy within a certain time frame? They can change the time frame, really play within the sandbox to see a bunch of what if analysis, which is a good segue. That's kind of getting into predictive analytics. Last couple questions, and then we'll wrap up. We've only got 5 minutes left. The last couple questions that came up. One is same person. Is there any feature that predicts renewal rates based on resident profile and behavioral features? And also, how do you incorporate customer lifetime value into the BI platform? Anybody have any? And I can comment a little bit from the product development perspective, but if anybody has any thoughts on that, I'll let you guys go first.
I don't know if it's a feature, but I mean, it's all the data is there. I mean, Donald, I think you and I have talked about this in the past of looking at, the number of maintenance requests a resident has, the duration of the time of those to get fixed and solved, and, then the duration of that resident's experience with you and all their renewals. Can you glean any insight? Then, how many posts on social media do they make? What's their engagement with the property? Does that give you any indication of their likelihood to renew? I think it's all very interesting. I don't know if it's actually going to move a needle enough to dive into a whole lot. But, finally having the data all in one place, you can actually ask those questions. You can spend the time to do those analytics if you want to. With the way the systems are now, the data is too all over the place. You can't even think about making those assumptions and building those reports.
Yeah, one of our newest dashboards that really blows my mind is where if you've got reputation management or survey data, then that comes into the warehouse. Then you've got operational data like exposure, occupancy, renewal rates. What's the relationship? So we built a dashboard. It's basically a scatter plot of that metric for the community. Is each community is a dot with the measured metric and their normalized overall survey score. And it was really interesting when we first ran it, right? We were sort of wondering, is it even going to show what you expect it to? And sure enough, this was actually using Brookfield data when we sampled it, Daniel. Like right away, guess what? The better the survey score, the higher the occupancy, the lower the availability, the higher the renewal rate. And you could actually then look and basically say, well, if I can move the score X points or X percent, here's what the lift in occupancy is going to be. Here's what the lift in renewal rate is going to be. You know, that's very, very hard to do. If we ever did that back in our Roadstone days, it was a day or two long project to pull all that data together. Here it is at the press of the button. So I do agree with you, Eric. The data's all there in terms of understanding lifetime value. The data's there to start building predictive analytics. One of the things that's interesting to us is those problems we talked about at the beginning, they're so prevalent that like to talk predictive analytics, well, first thing is, let's just get all the data into a centralized place. And I'd love to have you all on a webinar a couple years from now, talking about what we've built and what you've all built around predictive analytics because of that. So I guess we're running out of time. We're going to go, I'm going to go with one just final question, sort of rapid fire, 45-second answer or less. What advice would you give to somebody in the audience who is just evaluating or embarking on their BI journey? So 45 seconds or less, each of you, and then we'll wrap it up. Stephanie, you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say don't be afraid of technology. It's come along far enough that the integration into a good BI platform is easier than it has been historically. That our process, we found that the partnership has been great. So the lift on our end isn't nearly as high. And I would say to really understand what you want out of the platform so that you're thinking through what you need to supplement internally versus depending on your partner is probably the third most important component of the project.
Excellent. Eric, what advice would you give in 60 seconds or less?
Define, baby wins. I mean, you want to have incremental wins for the teams. And as we talked about, operational teams and executive teams, so that you get that buy-in from both the top and the bottom. So as you're rolling that out, find out what are those problems that people need addressed right away. Figure out that's the first solution you need to target to get done and get into their hands. Then you're going to get that buy-in, you're going to get that adoption, you're going to get that support, and that's incredibly important. You can't go a year and a half before you roll something out.
Yeah, no, I think building momentum, you get a virtuous cycle when you string together a bunch of baby wins. I love that. Advice. Daniel, what advice would you give to somebody just starting to evaluate or embark on this journey?
When you're starting out, make sure you have executive buy-in, which is key to adoption. If you don't have executive buy-in, it's going to be very difficult to get the business side to buy into. You need it to be from top down. Everyone's having a data conversation, and they need to walk the talk on decision making. If they're not making decisions on data and the executives say this is for everyone else but me, other people won't make decisions on data either. So that is key to getting the company business to buy into it. On the build side, consistent metrics. You need to have understanding of what you're looking at, that everyone's looking at the same thing, and to fix manual reporting first. If you can make your team more efficient, your analytic community more efficient by taking off their manual tasks and building those into dashboards, they will have more time to build for the future.
Excellent. Well, with that, I think we'll wrap it up. Again, thanks everybody in the audience. Everybody, I think only one person dropped off in the entire hour, so that was wonderful. Thanks for attending. Stephanie, Eric, Daniel, I can't thank you enough for giving such great information and sharing your experiences with everyone. That's one of the things I love about this industry is how much we're willing to share compared to so many other industries. And then for those of you on, if you're interested in more, go to www.getreba.com. We've got blogs, we've got a couple white papers up there, more content every month coming out. Feel free to reach out to me, first initial last name, ddavidoff at getreba.com. Would love to talk to you. And with that, I'll wish everybody a great and wonderful rest of the week and start to a wonderful month. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.